Chrono Trigger is possibly the greatest game ever made, and that's no hyperbole either. Everyone seems to agree with that, be it the structure of the narrative, the active and fun gameplay, the charming characters, the amazing story with multiple endings, the wonderful world to explore, the fantastic, memorable music, or any other multitude of reasons. The game is loved by all. Now, fast forward a couple of years, while still riding on the coattails of the success of Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross was soon developed and released for the PS1. Now, Chrono Cross is a very polarized game. Some people really love it and consider it a masterpiece just as Chrono Trigger was, yet others say it's an inferior sequel to an otherwise perfect game, and some people just flat out hate it. Then even more years passed by, and after many squashed fan games and fan sequels, many people seem to have forgotten about this series. Not a lot of people seem to talk about Chrono Trigger anymore, or its short-lived franchise. Nobody's asking for Chrono to be in Smash anymore, nobody's asking for a remake, and nobody really cares. I mean, that is a hyperbole. I know that there's obviously people out there who are die-hard, eat, shit, and breathe Chrono Trigger fans without a doubt, but the demand has dwindled. Part of that has to do with Square's lack of interest as well. Face it, the Chrono Trigger series is done for, and we will most likely never get a new Chrono game anytime soon, and while that is very depressing for those clamoring for a new game, I'd like to tell you Chrono Trigger fans out there that there may be a game that you've been neglecting all this time and you might not even know about. It's called Radical Dreamers, and it's a visual novel that was released for the Satellaview and acts as a sort of sequel slash side story to Chrono Trigger. It follows the adventures of Surge, a traveling musician, Kid, a Robin Hood-esque teenage girl, and Magile, a handsome, enigmatic masked magician that can fade into shadows at will. Together, this merry band of heroes set off to retrieve the Frozen Flame, which is said to be an ancient and powerful artifact that can grant any wish. And if you're a Chrono Trigger fan, the Frozen Flame would sound very familiar, as it is a very key part of the Chrono Trigger story. In Radical Dreamers, the Frozen Flame currently resides within the Viper Manor, the home to a very powerful aristocrat known as Lynx, who now rules over the estate after defeating a band of warriors known as the Acacia Dragoons. Now, if anyone out there is expecting a fantastical, magnificent adventure across the world with action-packed RPG systems and music by Nobuo Uematsu, well, tough luck. The game is a visual novel, meaning everything about the story was majorly text-based, and even with the little combat that does exist is told through complex text-based choices that flat out describe what you should do. Other than the background, there are no moving sprites. Unless you're into text-based adventures or visual novels, you probably won't find this game very enjoyable, and even if you are into the lore or story of Chrono Trigger, there's a possibility that you won't enjoy the story, as the dude who directed and wrote the game isn't very proud of what he made at all. When Chrono Trigger was being re-released for the PS1, the devs wanted to add the game as a sort of Easter egg, but Masato Kato, the writer of the game, refused to have it in the game as he was ashamed of what he had created. Well, maybe ashamed is a bit harsh. More like he felt that it was unfinished and wasn't worthy of actually re-putting it back into this game. Thankfully, some dedicated fans have translated the entirety of Radical Dreamers, so it is available to anyone with a SNES emulator and the ROM itself. I have read the game myself, just a portion of it anyways, and I think it's structurally well written, well described, and the story really does read out like a fully realized novel. Although whether the story is good or not, well, I think that's up to you to decide if you are a fan of Chrono Trigger. I can say that the story was alright from what I read, but really it's up to you to figure out whether or not it's a bad Chrono Trigger sequel. And I think the visuals for this game, as limited as they are actually really pretty to look at. Like, the sprites are very well made and very well animated, and also I think the story narrative, the way that it is told and the choices that you make really make it feel impactful, as this game has 3 endings, and once you beat the game you can have 6 more additional endings that are more comedic in nature. And combat, again, even though it is not as deep as it would be in Chrono Trigger with its RPG system, it is very well described, and each move you make, each decision you choose has an impact on the combat itself. And it also acts as a sort of active timer. If you don't make a choice quickly, you will be hurt with this invisible health bar that can be healed occasionally through story narrative moments. Depending on how well you do the combat and how well you defeat enemies, your relationship with Kid will evolve gradually, and you will soon turn her into a love interest, leading to one of the endings where you might survive the encounter at the end. Now, I'm not totally familiar with visual novels or the history of them, but for 1996, this game must have seemed pretty innovative with the choices that you make and how they would have been fleshed out more in the future if you made the right decisions or the wrong ones, and how there are multiple endings attached to this very short story that definitely makes it worth repeating over and over just to see every ending, even the additional endings that were added after you beat the game. But again, I can see how this is very unattractive to some people, because if you grew up with Chrono Trigger, you wanted an epic RPG battle system, a visually appealing game, a game where you could control your adventure, you can go anywhere you want instead of being stuck with text that describes where you go, and what you see, and what you do. That's not really something Chrono Trigger fans, I think, want, but if you're a diehard and you're dying for some content, I mean, this is definitely something for you. Although it is clear where the inspiration of Chrono Cross came from, as the characters Surge and Kid both reappear in the game, and while Magile does not appear in Chrono Cross, there is a character that resembles him in both character design and role, named Guile. He even has the blue hair, which is something Magile also has, and Lynx also returns as the main antagonist. Actually, quick spoiler, and this is a spoiler for Radical Dreamers, not for the other games. It is proven within the game itself that Magile is Magus, and it is widely speculated and believed that the character in Chrono Cross, Guile, is Magus in disguise. Further showing the connection between Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross, how many of the ideas were just straight up lifted and taken away from Radical Dreamers just to be put into Chrono Cross, except it's more fully fleshed out. And I'm not too familiar with Chrono Cross, so I can't really say if this story is related or a direct prequel to Chrono Cross, or if it's like some weird timeline thing. I don't know. So if anyone out there can help me out, that'd be well appreciated. Just leave a comment down below. Unfortunately, while the game itself will most likely never see the light of day anytime soon, it is at least interesting knowing that there was a sequel to Chrono Trigger just about a year after its release. Thankfully, someone out there was able to save this game on the Satellaview and upload it online, so it's no longer lost to time, unlike most other unfortunate Satellaview games. But then again, Radical Dreamers was one of those few games that didn't actually have a time limit or a limit itself on how many times you played the game, making it one of the few exclusive Satellaview games that allowed you to play whenever you wanted, even after St. Giga pulled the plug. Oh well. We may never see a new Chrono series game for a very long time, for as long as we live even. But if this is something you never knew about, well, here's your chance to delve into the world of Chrono Trigger all over again. Because you might not ever get anything else. Damn.